Hello, my name is Jack, and today I want to share my journey of learning English. Learning this language changed my life in ways I never imagined. It helped me make new friends, dream bigger, and unlock opportunities that once seemed impossible. But my journey wasn't easy. At first, I felt scared. I barely knew any words, and my accent was different. I worried about making mistakes and sounding silly. Maybe you feel the same way right now. But let me tell you something. Making mistakes is part of learning. If you never try, you'll never improve. Think about a baby learning to walk. A baby doesn't just stand up and start running. They take small steps, fall many times, but always get back up. Learning English is just like that. You will make mistakes, but every mistake brings you one step closer to success. Overcoming fear. Speak without worry. One of my biggest fears was speaking English in front of others. I used to think, what if people laugh at me? What if I say something wrong? But then I realized something important. If I stayed silent, I would never get better. So I pushed myself to speak, no matter how nervous I felt. And guess what? Most people were kind. They didn't laugh at me. Instead, they helped me. If you ever feel shy about speaking English, take a deep breath and smile. Speaking gets easier with practice. I remember the first time I had a conversation in English. My heart was racing, and I stumbled over my words. But after I finished, I felt so proud. It wasn't perfect, but I had tried, and that was all that mattered. Practice. Every day, even when alone. Some people think they need a partner to practice English, but you don't. You can practice alone, too. I used to talk to myself in English. It felt a little strange at first, but it really helped. Try describing what you're doing. I am making tea, or I will go to the store to buy some apples. You could say, it's a beautiful day outside. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes. Speaking English isn't about knowing big, fancy words. Simple words are enough to communicate. Another great way to improve is by reading out loud. When you read aloud, you practice pronunciation and build confidence. Try reading a book, an article, or even your own journal in English. Listening. The secret to learning fast. When I first started learning, I struggled to understand native English speakers. They spoke too fast. But instead of giving up, I decided to listen more. I started watching English movies and TV shows. In the beginning, I didn't understand much, but I kept watching. Slowly, I picked up words and phrases. Here's a tip. Watch with subtitles first. Read and listen at the same time. Then try watching without subtitles. This will help your brain get used to the sounds of English. You can also listen to English songs, audiobooks, or podcasts. The more you listen, the more you learn. Just like how babies learn their first language by listening. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you don't know how to say something, don't be afraid to ask. Asking questions helps you learn. When I was learning, I used to feel embarrassed if I didn't know a word. But later, I realized that no one expects you to be perfect. If you forget a word, describe it in another way. For example, if you forget the word umbrella, you can say, the thing we use when it rains. If you don't remember elevator, you can say, the moving box that takes you up in a building. People will understand, and in the process, you will learn new words. Think in English. A powerful habit. One of the biggest shifts in my learning happened when I stopped translating in my head. Instead of thinking in my first language and then translating into English, I started thinking directly in English. For example, when I saw an apple, I thought, apple, instead of the word in my native language. This helped me speak faster and more naturally. To practice this, try simple exercises like looking at objects around you and naming them in English. Make a daily to-do list in English. Write short stories or diary entries in English. Small goals lead to big success. Learning. English is like climbing a mountain. You don't reach the top in one day, you take one step at a time. Set small goals for yourself. For example, learn 5 new words every day. Practice speaking for 10 minutes daily, or watch an English video and write down 3 new phrases. Each small step will bring you closer to fluency. And don't forget to celebrate your progress. If you spoke in English today, that's an achievement. If you learned a new word, that's a win. Connect with people. The power of conversations language isn't just about words, it's about connection. I remember the first time I spoke to a tourist in English. They understood me and we had a great conversation. That moment made me realize that English isn't just about grammar or vocabulary, it's about expressing yourself and building relationships. If you get the chance, talk to native English speakers. Don't be afraid. Most of them are happy to help. Even if they correct you, see it as a chance to improve. You can also join online English learning groups, attend language exchange meetups, or chat with people from different countries. The journey never ends. There will be days when learning feels difficult. Some days you might feel stuck or frustrated, but don't give up. You are stronger than you think. Whenever you feel tired, remember why you started. Think about the future, when you can confidently speak English, travel the world, and make new friends. Mistakes don't mean failure, they mean progress. Every time you speak, you're getting better. Every new word you learn is a step forward. One day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. You'll remember the struggles and moments of doubt, but also the joy of learning, and you will be proud. Final thoughts. Keep going. Learning English is like planting a tree. It grows slowly, but over time it becomes strong. You will be proud of yourself for not giving up. So start today. Speak as much as you can. Don't worry about mistakes. Keep trying, and one day you'll say, I did it. And remember, you are not alone in this journey. Millions of people around the world are learning English just like you. So keep going, keep practicing, and enjoy the process. One day, English will feel as natural as your first language, and that day will come sooner than you think. Believe in yourself. You can do it. Chapter 2. My Journey to Learning English. A story of persistence and growth. I still remember the day I first started learning English. It felt overwhelming. I couldn't understand much, and speaking was even harder. Every time I tried to form a sentence, I hesitated. The words didn't come out the way I wanted, and I often felt embarrassed. But I didn't stop. Step by step, I started to improve. At first, I made many mistakes, more than I can count. I would say the wrong words, mix up grammar, and struggle with pronunciation. But over time, I realized something important. Mistakes are not failures. They are lessons. If you feel afraid of making mistakes, I completely understand. I was the same. I worried that people would laugh at me, that my accent would sound strange, or that no one would understand me. But one day, something changed. The first time I spoke English in public. I remember the first time I had to speak English to someone. My hands were shaking, my heart was beating fast, and I thought about running away. But I took a deep breath and said something, just a simple sentence. And then something amazing happened. The person understood me. They smiled and replied. I couldn't believe it. My English wasn't perfect, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that I tried. That small moment gave me confidence. It made me realize that speaking English is not about perfection. It's about communication. Even if you make mistakes, people will understand you. And most importantly, they will respect you for trying. Practicing. Every day, anytime, anywhere. After that experience, I decided to practice English every single day. I didn't wait for a class or a tutor. I practiced whenever and wherever I could. Here's what I did. I spoke to myself in English, describing what I was doing. I am making tea. I will go outside. Or, it is a sunny day today. I listened to English movies and songs, even though I didn't understand everything at first. I read books, newspapers, and even food labels to pick up new words. I wrote a short journal entry in English every night to practice thinking in the language. At first, speaking to myself felt strange, but I soon realized it was a powerful way to practice. If you don't have a language partner, talking to yourself is the next best thing. The power of listening. How I learned to speak naturally. Listening was one of the biggest things that helped me improve. I started watching movies in English. In the beginning, I couldn't understand much. The words seemed too fast, and I felt lost. But I didn't give up. I started using subtitles, reading and listening at the same time. Slowly, I began recognizing words and phrases. I learned how native speakers used their voices, facial expressions, and hand movements to express emotions. One of the biggest lessons I learned from listening was how to pronounce words correctly. Many times we learn words from a book, but when we hear them spoken, they sound different. Listening helped me understand the natural flow of English. Reading, a simple way to grow vocabulary. Reading was another key to improving my English. At first, it was slow. I had to stop and look up words. But I made a rule. If I didn't understand a word, I wouldn't just memorize it. I would use it in a sentence. For example, when I learned the word delicious, I made sentences like, "This cake is delicious. The food at this restaurant is delicious." This helped me remember new words easily. Over time, I needed to check the dictionary less and less because I started recognizing words naturally. If you are starting to read in English, don't feel discouraged. It's okay to go slow. Every page you read is progress. Asking questions without fear. One of the most valuable lessons I learned was that it's okay to ask questions. When I didn't understand something, I would ask my friends, my teacher, or even strangers. At first, I was afraid that people might get annoyed, but to my surprise, people were happy to help. Asking questions is one of the fastest ways to learn. It shows that you are curious and eager to improve. Improve, never be afraid to ask, "How do you say this?" Or, "What does this word mean?" Every question brings you one step closer to fluency. Setting small, achievable goals. I knew I couldn't learn English overnight, so instead of trying to do everything at once, I set small goals. One day, I focused on learning 5 new words. Another day, I practiced one pronunciation sound. Some days, I focused on speaking just one sentence correctly. Each time I reached a small goal, I felt a sense of achievement. These small wins kept me motivated. Patience, the key to learning. Any language. There were times when I felt stuck. I felt like I wasn't improving. But then I looked back and realized I was speaking better than before. Language learning is like climbing a mountain. Some days you move fast, and some days you feel like you're standing still. But as long as you keep moving forward, you are making progress. Celebrate every step. Every little success counts. The first time I had a conversation in English, I celebrated. The first time I understood a full English movie without subtitles, I celebrated. You should do the same. Celebrate every milestone, no matter how small. Did you learn a new word today? That's progress. Did you speak one sentence in English? That's success. Did you write something in English? That's improvement. Every step you take brings you closer to fluency. Confidence comes with practice. In the beginning, I was afraid of speaking, but over time, I realized people don't care about my mistakes. They don't laugh at me. They appreciate my effort. The more I spoke, the more confident I became. The more I practiced, the easier it got. I also practiced with friends who were learning English. We spoke in English together, corrected each other's mistakes, and helped one another. It was hard at first, but over time, we improved together. Writing helps you think in English. Writing helped me organize my thoughts. Every night I wrote a short paragraph in English. It could be about my day, my thoughts, or something interesting I learned. This helped me remember new words and think in English instead of translating from my native language. The day I knew I had improved. One day, I had a conversation in English with a stranger. I was nervous, but I spoke anyway. And guess what? The person understood me. They even helped me when I made mistakes. That moment made me realize that I had improved. I still had more to learn, but I was no longer afraid. Final words. Never give up. Learning English is not easy, but it is worth it. Every time you speak, you improve. Every time you listen, you learn. Every time you write, you get better. So don't give up. Keep going. One day, you will speak English fluently. Believe in yourself. You can do it. Chapter 3. The Journey of Learning English. Stay motivated and keep going. Learning English is not always easy. Some days you might feel like you're making great progress, and other days it might seem like nothing is improving. But I want you to remember something very important. Every small step counts. Even if your progress feels slow, you are still moving forward. Every new word you learn, every sentence you speak, and every mistake you make is helping you get better. When I first started learning English, I often felt frustrated. I wanted to speak fluently right away. I wanted to express myself without hesitation. But over time, I learned an important lesson. Learning takes time, and there is no need to rush. Be patient with yourself. It's okay if you don't understand everything at once. It's okay if you make mistakes. What truly matters is that you keep going. I used to get discouraged when I struggled to find the right words or when I couldn't understand fast conversations. But later, I realized that language learning is like growing a plant. You don't see the growth every day, but if you keep watering it, one day it becomes strong. The same is true for English. If you practice a little bit every day, you will improve. Practice. Every day, even for a short time. One of the best things you can do is practice every day. You don't need to spend hours studying. Even 10 to 15 minutes a day can make a big difference. Here are some simple ways to practice daily. Talk to yourself in English. Describe your day, your surroundings, or what you're thinking. Listen to English. Watch a short video. Listen to a song, or tune into a podcast. Read something in English. A short story, a news article, or even a social media post. Write in English. Keep a journal where you write about your day or your thoughts. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. Over time, you will notice that you understand more, and your speaking will feel more natural. Make learning fun. If learning feels like a chore, it becomes difficult to stay motivated. That's why it's important to enjoy the process. Here are some fun ways to practice English. Watch movies or TV shows in English. If you don't understand everything, start with subtitles. Listen to music and try to understand the lyrics. Read books or comics that interest you. Play language learning games or use apps. Join an English-speaking group or club. The more enjoyable your practice is, the more you will want to learn. Think in English. A powerful habit. One thing that helped me a lot was trying to think in English instead of my native language. At first, I translated everything in my head, but I realized that this slowed me down. So, I started training myself to think directly in English. Here's how you can start. When you see an object, name it in English instead of translating. When you are alone, try forming sentences in English about what you're doing. Instead of translating a word, try describing it in English. For example, if you forget the word umbrella, you can think, "It is something I use when it rains." The more you do this, the faster and more natural your English will become. Speaking. Don't wait for perfection. Many people wait until they feel ready to speak English. But the truth is, you will never feel 100% ready. The best way to get better at speaking is to start speaking now. You don't need perfect grammar or a big vocabulary. Just start with what you know. Talk to a friend or family member in English. Find a language partner who also wants to practice. Speak with native English speakers if you have the opportunity. If no one is available, talk to yourself. At first, speaking to yourself might feel strange, but it helps build confidence. and improve fluency. Listening, a key to speaking. Better. Listening is one of the best ways to improve your English. When you listen, you learn how words are pronounced, how sentences are structured, and the natural rhythm of English. You don't need to understand every word. Just listen as much as possible. Over time, your brain will begin to recognize patterns, and you'll improve naturally. We'll start recognizing patterns. Here are some ways to improve listening skills. Listen to English songs and try to write down the words. Watch English TV shows and movies with subtitles first, then without. Listen to audiobooks or podcasts while walking or doing household chores. The more you listen, the easier it will be to speak and understand English naturally. Reading. The secret to expanding your vocabulary. Reading in English is a great way to learn new words and understand sentence structure, but you don't have to read long books. Start with something simple like short stories, news articles, blog posts, children's books. Even reading for 10 minutes a day can help. Choose topics that interest you so that reading feels enjoyable rather than like studying. Making mistakes is normal. Embrace them. When I first started learning English, I made many mistakes. I was afraid that people would laugh at me, but most people were kind. One time, I said the wrong word in a sentence. I felt nervous, but the person I was speaking to smiled and helped me. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I realized that every mistake was an opportunity to learn. So don't be afraid of mistakes. They are not a sign of failure. They are signs of progress. Set small goals to stay motivated. Trying to learn everything at once can feel overwhelming. Instead, set small, achievable goals. Learn 5 new words each day. Practice speaking for 10 minutes daily. Write 1 short paragraph in English. Focus on 1 grammar rule per week. Each small success will make you feel proud and motivated to keep going. Take breaks when needed. Sometimes learning can feel exhausting. If you ever feel frustrated or tired, it's okay to take a break. Stepping away for a short time can actually help you learn better. When you come back, you'll feel refreshed and ready to continue. Remember why you started. Whenever learning feels hard, remind yourself why you want to learn English. Is it to get a better job, travel and talk to people from different countries, watch movies without subtitles, make new friends? Whatever your reason is, hold on to it. It will keep you motivated when things feel difficult. Learning English is a journey. Keep going. Learning a new language takes time, but every single day you are improving. Even if you don't notice it, you are getting better. So keep practicing, keep learning. One day you will be able to speak English with confidence, and when that day comes, you will look back and be proud of how far you've come. Never give up. You can do it. Chapter 4. Overcoming Fear and Gaining Confidence in English. When I first started speaking English, I was extremely nervous. My heart would race and my hands would shake. I worried that people wouldn't understand me, and I thought I had to speak perfectly. But over time, I learned something important. It's okay to feel nervous, and it's okay to make mistakes. The most important thing is to keep trying. One thing that helped me was reminding myself that no one expects me to be perfect. Even native English speakers make mistakes sometimes. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to improve step by step. Mistakes are lessons, not failures. Every time I made a mistake, I used it as a learning opportunity. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I would ask myself, what did I do wrong? How can I say it better next time? If you never make mistakes, you will never know what you need to improve. So don't be afraid of mistakes. Embrace them. They are signs that you are learning and growing. Daily practice. Small efforts lead to big improvements. I also learned that practicing every day was key to improvement. I didn't wait for a special day or a perfect moment. I practiced whenever I could, even if it was just for a few minutes. Some ways I practiced daily were speaking to myself in English about my day or thoughts, listening to English songs, podcasts, and TV shows, reading short articles, books, or blogs, writing a few sentences in English every night. At first, it felt difficult, but the more I practiced, the easier it became. Listening. A powerful way to learn. I realized that listening was just as important as speaking. When I listened to English, I learned how words were pronounced and how people naturally spoke. At first, I struggled to understand everything, but over time, I started recognizing patterns. I didn't understand everything, but I didn't let that stop me. I kept listening, and little by little, I began to recognize more words and phrases. One technique that helped me was repeating what I heard. If I liked a sentence or phrase from a movie or podcast, I would say it out loud, trying to copy the way the speaker said it. This not only helped my pronunciation, but also made me feel more confident when speaking. Reading to build vocabulary and understanding. Reading in English also helped me improve. In the beginning, I chose simple books. I didn't try to read complicated texts right away. I would read for just a few minutes every day. Even if I only learned one new word a day, I considered that progress. The more I read, the more I learned, and I started to feel proud of my improvement. If you're just starting, try reading. Short stories, articles about topics you enjoy, children's books, blogs, and social media posts, finding people to practice. With practicing with others made a big difference for me. I found a few friends who also wanted to improve their English, and we made a rule. We would only speak English when we met. At first it was hard. We didn't know many words and we made many mistakes. But instead of feeling bad, we laughed about it and learned from each other. I also had the chance to speak with native English speakers. At first I was afraid they might judge me, but I was wrong. Most people were kind and patient. They understood that I was learning, and if I made a mistake, they would correct me gently. Speaking with native speakers helped me feel more comfortable and confident. Let go of the fear of making mistakes. One of the biggest lessons I learned was that mistakes don't matter as much as I thought. In the past, when I made a mistake, I would feel embarrassed. But then I realized something. People don't care about small mistakes. They only care about understanding what you're trying to say. One time I was talking to a friend, and I didn't know the English word for something. Instead of giving up, I explained it in a different way. And guess what? My friend understood me. That moment taught me that communication is more important than perfection. You don't need to know every word. If you can explain yourself in a simple way, you are already succeeding. Set small goals and celebrate your progress. I didn't try to learn everything at once. Instead, I set small, achievable goals. One day, I focused on learning 5 new words. Another day, I worked on my pronunciation. Some days, I just practiced speaking for 5 minutes. Each small step added up over time, and before I knew it, I had made a lot of progress. I also learned to celebrate every small victory. If I learned a new word, I told myself, "Good job." If I had a conversation in English, I felt proud. Even if I made mistakes, I celebrated the fact that I tried. Thinking in English, the secret to speaking naturally. At first, I translated everything in my head before speaking. This made my sentences slow and unnatural. But over time, I trained myself to think directly in English. Here's how I practiced: naming objects around me in English, describing my day in my head in English, writing my thoughts in English instead of my native language. The more I did this, the faster and more natural my speaking became. Progress takes time. Keep going. Some days, I felt like I wasn't improving at all. But when I looked back at where I started, I saw how much I had learned. Learning a language is a journey. Some days are easy and some days are hard. But every day, you are getting one step closer to fluency. Even if you can't see the progress, trust that it's happening. Final thoughts. You are closer than you think. The more you speak, listen, read, and practice, the better your English will be. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to feel nervous. What matters is that you don't stop. One day, you will realize that you are speaking English without thinking about every word. You will feel confident, and you will be proud of how far you've come. That will be your reward for all the effort you put in. So don't give up. Keep learning, keep practicing, and keep believing in yourself. You are on your way to fluency. Chapter 5. The Journey of Learning English. Every step counts. Learning English is a journey, and like any journey, it takes time. Sometimes progress feels slow, and you may feel like you're not improving. But remember this: every small step you take brings you closer to your goal. The more you practice, the easier it gets. I remember when I first started, I felt like I would never be able to speak fluently. I struggled to understand conversations, and I often felt lost when people spoke too fast. But I didn't give up. I kept going. Today, I can have conversations in English, and that makes me proud. Listening. The first step to understanding. At the beginning, I couldn't understand much when people spoke to me in English. I couldn't catch all the words, and conversations felt overwhelming. Sounded like a blur. At first, everything sounded like a blur. But instead of feeling discouraged, I made a decision. I would listen as much as possible. I started watching movies, listening to music, and paying close attention to how people spoke. Even if I didn't understand everything, I learned something new every day. One trick that helped me was repeating what I heard. If I didn't understand a word, I would repeat the whole sentence out loud. This helped me with pronunciation and speaking confidence. The more I listened and repeated, the more natural English started to feel. Speaking, the most important practice. One of the biggest mistakes learners make is waiting until they feel ready to speak. But the truth is, you will never feel 100% ready. The best way to learn is to start speaking now. At first, I was shy. I was afraid of making mistakes, but I realized that mistakes are just part of learning. Even native speakers make mistakes. I decided to speak in English as much as possible. I described what I saw around me. I talked to myself in English, and I practiced with friends who were also learning. Speaking, even if no one was around, made me feel more confident. Over time, I noticed that I didn't hesitate as much. Words came more easily, and my fear of speaking started to disappear. Finding people to practice. With practicing with others made a huge difference. I found people who also wanted to improve their English, and we made a simple rule. We would only speak in English. At first it was hard. We didn't know many words, and we made a lot of mistakes. But instead of feeling embarrassed, we laughed at our mistakes and learned from them. Speaking with other learners made English less scary. It became fun. I also started talking to native English speakers. At first I was scared. What if they judged me? But I was surprised. Most people were kind and patient. They understood I was learning, and when I made mistakes, they helped me. Speaking with native speakers made me realize that people don't expect you to be perfect. They just want to understand you. Reading. A simple way to improve vocabulary. Reading in English was another important part of my journey, but I didn't start with difficult books. I started with simple stories and articles that I could understand. Each day I read for just a few minutes. Over time I noticed that I learned new words without memorizing them. I understood how sentences were structured, and my grammar improved naturally. The best part? Reading didn't feel like studying. It was fun. If you're starting out, don't try to read long, complex books. Instead, choose short stories, blogs, news articles, children's books. Even 10 minutes a day can make a big difference. Watching movies and TV shows, learning through fun. Watching TV shows and movies in English helped me in many ways. It wasn't just about learning words, it was about understanding how people actually communicate. At first, I didn't understand much, but I kept watching. Over time, I started recognizing words and phrases. Here's what helped me. Watching with subtitles first, then watching again without them. Pausing and repeating sentences to practice pronunciation. Writing down new words and using them in conversation. Watching English shows helped me see how language is used in real life. It also made learning more interesting. Writing, a secret to thinking in English. Writing in English helped me think in English instead of translating everything from my native language. I started writing directly in English. At first, I wrote short sentences about my day. Slowly, my writing improved. One thing that helped me was keeping a journal. Every day I wrote a few sentences about what I did. If I didn't know how to say something, I looked it up and learned a new word. The more I wrote, the easier it became. Writing helped me remember new words and use them correctly. Staying positive, the key to success. Sometimes learning English felt slow. I had days when I felt like I wasn't improving, but then I reminded myself, progress happens little by little. Even if I only learned one new word or understood one sentence, that was progress. I started celebrating small victories. If I had a conversation in English, I felt proud. If I understood a new word, I told myself, "Good job." If I made a mistake, I reminded myself. That's how I learn. Staying positive made a huge difference. Instead of feeling frustrated, I focused on how much I had improved. Setting small goals, one step at a time. Instead of trying to learn everything at once, I set small, achievable goals. Learning 5 new words a day, practicing speaking for 10 minutes, writing one short paragraph. Each small goal gave me a sense of achievement and kept me motivated. Tip: if you're feeling overwhelmed, start with small goals. Each small step will add up over time. Mistakes are not failures. They are lessons. The biggest lesson I learned was that mistakes don't mean failure. They mean progress. Every time I made a mistake, I learned something new. Instead of feeling embarrassed, I started seeing mistakes as opportunities to improve. I reminded myself, everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers. What matters is that I keep going. Final thoughts. Keep going. You're closer than you think. Learning English is not always easy. Some days will feel harder than others, but every time you practice, you are getting better. Every mistake is a lesson. Every new word is a step forward. Every sentence you speak brings you closer to fluency. So don't stop. Keep listening, speaking, reading, and writing. One day, you will look back and see how far you've come. You'll realize that you are speaking English without even thinking, and on that day you will feel proud of yourself. Until then, keep going.